Good evening. Something familiar, someone you know, or something you didn't realise was important at the time. If that's what you see in the next 3/4 of an hour, do call us. You may be able to help solve a very serious crime. And you can influence things straight away. Here's the number. We're live, as always, and police officers working on tonight's cases are here now waiting for your call. Or if you prefer, you could talk to a BBC researcher. And as usual, we've this separate number for deaf viewers using the Minicom Supertel system. And perhaps you'd care to make a note of it.
Our reconstructions tonight come from Derbyshire, London and Lancashire. Almost exactly a year ago, 16-year-old Michael Boulton disappeared while out jogging near his home in Eyam in Derbyshire. Police are hoping someone tonight will at last help discover what has happened to him. In Clevelands near Blackpool, a pensioner found himself caught up in a violent raid on a security van. The guard received serious injuries in the attack. And police in West London are trying to unravel the extraordinary mystery of Surinder Gill, an insurance salesman. He was hijacked in his own car, then went off shopping as though nothing had happened. The following morning, he was found murdered. And we also have another Aladdin's cave of unclaimed property in the studio. You never know, something here might be yours.
Each year, thousands of people, probably more than 100,000, go missing. That is, they disappear from home. There's no central register in Britain for missing persons, and the police are reluctant to chase after anyone if it seems likely they've walked out of their own free will. Now, that's usually the case, of course, and in fact the vast majority make contact or turn up within a year. But our first case tonight is one which is causing grave concern: the disappearance of a schoolboy, Michael Boulton. Police believe his disappearance may be murder. This video was taken at his school shortly before Michael vanished. The Peak District of Derbyshire is one of Britain's national parks, attracting visitors from far afield. At its heart lies the village of Eyam. This was home for Michael Boulton for 2 years from 1987. The countryside had become a sanctuary for Michael. He spent hours on his own in the hills around his home. A rather shy young man, more at ease with nature and with himself than with the company of other people. He'd been in care since he was 2, but he'd now settled in with his new foster parents and things seemed to be going well.
Michael was a quiet boy, a loner. Michael was trusting. He was very good with animals and our children, our young children. And he was also good with me. You know, we had a good relationship where, because of his past, had been quite traumatic. He'd been in quite a number of homes, and they'd all broken down. So Michael coming to live with us was like a last resort. If it didn't work with us, he would stay in a children's home. And we'd got him to the fact where he would give me a kiss and a cuddle to go to bed at night, which for Michael was very good, because his problems were coming to terms with why everybody in his past had rejected him over the years. But we had it put in writing that Michael wouldn't leave us, no matter what. And from then on, things were good. And we miss him very much. He liked jogging, and he was in training at the time he went missing to take part in our annual fell race. He used to take pride in his running and set himself targets that each run he did, he would do quicker each time, leading up, of course, to the fell race.
Michael's running was distinctive. He'd swing his arms around like windmills, running and always seeking somewhere to belong.
Michael was a religious boy and went to church regularly too. The reason being that religion was the only stable thing Michael had ever had in his life.
He did have something of a stable job, though. At weekends, he worked at the local pub, doing odd jobs for the landlord.
Hello, Michael. How are you getting on?
Oh, all right.
What have you done so far?
I just went clean up for one day.
Yeah. OK. Do you think you'll have time to do a bit in the car park?
I don't know.
If you have time.
Oh.
I know it's a big job, but if you can, a little bit at a time, at least we get it done in the end.
It's now Sunday, the 7th of May, the day that Michael disappeared. It was the first sunny weekend of last year, and he was working outside all day.
Well, on the Sunday, he came to carry on from where he left off on the previous day, removing the docks out of the croft. principally where in the hen run there. And he didn't sign out until 3 o'clock. He just signed out and went, you see, and he didn't collect his money, which was available for him, you see, which we usually give to him on the Sunday. He was due to £16. But he left word with the girls in the kitchen that he was coming back to finish at a later time and would collect his money then.
Michael left the pub just after 3 o'clock, but nothing seemed unusual. In the village square, he met Joan Plant, whose husband runs the local football team.
Hi, Michael. Are you going to come and play football for us tomorrow night for the under-16s?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not very good at football.
Oh, of course you're good. You were brilliant on Friday. We couldn't have done without you.
Do you think so?
Yeah, really.
Oh, I don't know. I would have just been working all day.
Oh, OK, then. We'll see what you can do. If you can make it, come to the car park for 5:30.
Yeah, all right. That's
OK.
all right.
Look forward to seeing you.
OK.
OK, love. Bye.
See you.
Bye.
That was the last known conversation with Michael Boulton, though there were hundreds of visitors to Eyam that day and thousands in the Peak District who might have seen him. Were you there? Could you have seen Michael that Sunday, on May the 7th, somewhere in the area? Michael was seen in the vicinity by the people in this car, heading back to Eyam through the neighbouring village of Stoney Middleton.
We'll have to go down
Corin
again
Simpson worked part-time at the pub.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Sunday afternoon.
Great.
Oh, I wonder what Michael's doing down here.
Who's Michael?
He works up at the Miners' Arms.
It's possible Michael carried on down the A623. Anne Povall, who was out with her husband at Calver, saw someone who looked just like him. The A623 is a busy road. It's a shortcut from Manchester to Chesterfield, South Yorkshire and Nottinghamshire. That Sunday in Manchester, Nottingham Forest met Liverpool in a replay after the Hillsborough disaster, and police believe Michael was seen by a Forest supporter at about 5:15. He would have had very little money on him, no change of clothes, and, as far as anyone knows, no intention of leaving home.
Michael was a boy who sort of loved the family, although he wasn't ours. The relationship we built up with Michael made us feel pretty sure that Michael was one of ours. We'd had Mother's Day just gone, where he bought me a lovely plate with Mother on. And even up to the night before, when he gave me his kiss and cuddle, but he thought too much of us to put us through this. If Michael had run away, he would have contacted us. I do feel Michael's dead. Because, as I said before, he would contact us if he was okay. And I fear the worst.
Well, after 11 months, it must be said, the police also fear the worst. It just so happens that the officer in charge of tracing Michael Boulton, believe it or not, shares his name, Detective Chief Inspector Mick Boulton. There always must be some possibility he's alive, but really, you very much discount it now.
Certainly. At this moment in time, and well, for a long time in actual fact, we do feel that Michael is dead. I think, were he not, he would have contacted his foster parents. He had no preparations at all. He took nothing with him.
Now, you conducted a very, very extensive search of the area, haven't you?
We did indeed. For 8 weeks last year, a search was made around Eyam and Stoney Middleton, totally within a mile radius, within a 5-mile radius, roads and tracks, allowing vehicle access was searched for 150 yards each side of the road. And in recent weeks, further searches have been carried out in particular areas around Eyam and Stoney Middleton. Nothing has been found.
So it could well be that he was abducted and taken outside the immediate area?
It certainly looks that that is a strong possibility.
How can people help? What can people do after this period of time?
Well, I think really appointed to the day in question was the football match at Manchester between Liverpool and Forest, and anyone who was in Eyam or Stoney Middleton at the time who feels they may have seen Michael either running, talking to anyone, getting into a vehicle, or anyone who may have some knowledge of his whereabouts, would they please contact us?
OK, this is on the A623, or thereabouts.
That's right, yes.
Carver, Stoney Middleton, Eyam, the date again Sunday, the 7th of May. Here's
Yes.
the number to ring if you can help, 01811 8055. Or you can call the police station in Buxton, that's on 0298 72100. 0298 is the code for Buxton, 72100. Just in case, through some happy turn of events, Michael, you are alive, you are all right, you are watching this, please do call us yourself. You can speak to a BBC researcher if you prefer, and once we're really sure it's you, we won't bother you again, just so long as you're okay. That has to be said, it's a long shot. Incidentally, let me make a plea to viewers who are anxious to trace someone other than Michael. We in Crimewatch simply aren't equipped to help you. If someone's gone missing, tell the police. If, on the other hand, you've just lost contact with someone, that's rather different. In that case, you might try the Salvation Army. Now, that's such a common eventuality. Before we move on to our next case on Crimewatch, here's some advice on tracing people who've left of their own accord.
Very occasionally we will find that we ourselves and the police are being asked to look at the same situation. A fairly obvious example would be where a husband, for no apparent reason at the time, doesn't turn up from work one day. His wife will get in touch with the police, they will treat it seriously, and she may also get in touch with us. Now, as far as the police are concerned, their task is to ensure that the man is alive and well. We would go beyond that and try to bring about a reconciliation.
Good afternoon, Salvation Army. Can we help you? Yes, it is.
We operate almost entirely on information that is available in public records. It has been said that there's no facility or procedure available to us that isn't available to the general public. It is just the case that over, more than 100 years, we have learned how best to use the facilities and resources that are available. We are not acting for a client. We are seeking to act in the best interests of all the parties concerned. And if there seems to be a very good reason why the person that we found doesn't wish to disclose his whereabouts to a relative, then obviously we have to accept that. And under no circumstances would we ever disclose an address to any third party without prior consent. We start work on something like 5,500 investigations every year. And out of those, we are successful in making contact with the person we're looking for in well over 70%, which I think, if I may say it myself, is pretty good.
Well, if you want to contact the Salvation Army, don't write to us, please write to them, enclosing a stamped address envelope with any inquiry to the Salvation Army Investigation Department, 105 to 109 Judd Street, London WC1. Now, if you take that code down in full, WC1H9TS.
Well, let's hope we're already getting some calls on Michael Boulton. Meanwhile, a look back at some of the results from last month's Crimewatch. There have been promising new leads on two of our reconstructions, the murder of Keith Burgess and the attacks on the jewellers in Birmingham. In each case, the information from viewers has led to new trains of inquiry, but police at this stage can't give the details on what's happening. The case of Carmel Gamble, the anorexic woman who was murdered at her cottage in Stroud in Gloucestershire, moved 70 people to phone us with information, but despite all the goodwill, none of the calls has so far led anywhere. I can tell you that as a direct result of photocall, police are waiting to interview a man about a series of armed robberies. A viewer rang to say they thought he'd gone abroad and was renting a villa in Marbella. Interpol was alerted and a man is now in custody with Spanish police, pending extradition proceedings.
There are fresh hopes this month of solving the murder of Wayne Taylor, the 11-year-old from Brixton in South London, who in February was sexually assaulted and suffocated. Because of new forensic findings, detectives have now been able to link Wayne's death with an attack on a 9-year-old boy in June last year. That happened 2 miles away. The child in that case survived and was able to compile a picture of his attacker. He's in his 20s, he's quite short for a man, he's 5'4" or thereabouts, and slim, though with an athletic build. I don't know what it's worth, but he told his victim he was called Derek. If you recognise him, please do call us 01 811 8055. That's 01 811 8055. Or you can ring the incident room at Lambeth. That's 01 230 1212. Ask for Lambeth.
Another piece of news from last month. Thanks to Crimewatch viewers, police have now discovered the identity of the woman whose body was found on Hamworthy Beach at Poole in Dorset in February. Police drew up an artist's impression, and that jogged the memory of a British Rail guard who rang to say he was sure he'd spoken to her on the Manchester to Poole train. She'd been inquiring about resorts on the south coast. The next day, Reading police rang the Dorset force, identifying her as someone on their missing persons list. Police now feel there were no suspicious circumstances surrounding her death, and last week a coroner's inquest returned an open verdict.
Well, now to this month's incident desk, brief appeals for help on cases from across the country. Superintendent David Hatcher is on holiday this month, so Colin Fry, a Chief Inspector from Dorset Police, joins Detective Constable Jackie Haynes.
First, the murder of schoolgirl Christine Lee. Strathclyde Police need your help to solve the murder of this 10-year-old from the Castlemilk area of Glasgow. At about 10 to 4 on Monday, the 12th of February, Christine left home in Macquarie Road, Castlemilk, to visit her grandmother in Ballantay Road. She would probably have taken this route and crossed to the other side of this play area, known locally as the pond. She went this way every day after school. She ran a few errands for her grandmother in Hodham Terrace and was last seen at about 5:30 p.m. walking back towards the pond, probably making her way home. 4 hours later, local residents found Christine's body nearby. She was wearing clothes identical to these, a purple anorak with this distinctive pattern lining, these jeans with Batman motifs on the legs, and sneakers. She carried a black umbrella. Could you possibly have seen Christine that night? There was snow on the ground, so it wasn't that dark. We believe that there were over 300 people in the area that evening, and Glasgow Police need to talk to everyone in the hope that they might remember some small detail which could give them a clue about Christine's murderer. The officers also want to speak to one man who was seen running away from the pond towards Hodham Avenue. He was in his early 20s, about 5'8", slim and wearing a light-coloured top. The officers from the incident room have made numerous appeals, but the response sadly has been very poor. If you saw Christine that night, Monday the 12th of February, or were in the area yourself, or have any information, then please call us. There is a reward.
Next, my colleagues in Suffolk are appealing for help in connection with 3 rapes. They all happened in the Gipswick Park area of Ipswich, and we think were possibly committed by the same man over the last 3.5 years. The first attack was back in 1986. A 41-year-old woman was raped at knife point as she walked home along the footpath near Chesterton Close. She helped police compile this video fit a year later, after the same man accosted her again. This video fit was made by a 22-year-old woman who was raped on Friday the 20th of October last year near Princes Street Bridge, just east of Gipswick Park. Then, on Sunday the 14th of January, at 8:30 in the evening, a 17-year-old girl was raped as she crossed the same park. Like the attack in 1986, the man used a knife to threaten her. There are distinct similarities between these rapes, and Suffolk police believe the 2 video fits could be the same man. It's a vague description, but he seems to be about 5'8" to 6 foot tall and 25 to 35 years old. So, if you were anywhere around Gipswick Park at the crucial times and remember anything at all, or if you can help to identify the rapist, please call us now.
Suffolk Police need your help to trace these 3 men. The video fits were compiled by a sharp-eyed worker at the Angel Corner Clock Museum in Bury St Edmunds. He noticed the men acting suspiciously on March the 19th, 4 days before the museum was robbed of a valuable and unique collection of watches and clocks. The first man is 5'7" and in his mid-30s. He has short black curly hair, a moustache, and wears glasses with abnormally thick lenses. The second man is about 5'8", stocky build and in his early 20s. He was wearing a golfer's hat with the peak turned up. The third man is 6'2", 30 years old and possibly Eastern European. The thieves broke in on Friday the 23rd of March, smashing a window at the back of the building at about 7:15 in the evening. They used these hammers and an axe, which were probably sold at a market. So we'd be very interested in any calls from a trader who might remember who bought them. Or you could have seen the van used in the robbery, stolen from London 2 weeks earlier. We need to know where it was between March the 10th and March the 23rd. But the stolen property is more likely to jog your memory. 54 watches and clocks were taken, a fine collection worth at least £300,000. This watch alone is worth £50,000. They were bequeathed to Bury St Edmunds by a local man in memory of his son, who was killed in the Second World War. There's a substantial reward being offered for arrests and the recovery of this property. So if you have any information to offer us on this or any of our cases on Incident Desk, please ring us now.
And if you think there's any way you can help, here's the number: 01811 8055, 01811 8055.
Our next case is the robbery of a security van outside a post office in Blackpool. A gang of 3 men viciously attacked a security guard and escaped with £17,000. The guard was seriously injured, although I am glad to say he's now on the road to recovery. Several of the witnesses who've already helped police on this inquiry have helped us make this reconstruction. It begins on the day before the robbery, that's Thursday, March the 8th, at Blackpool. Blackpool is the holiday centre of the north, with around 6 million visitors a year. About 4 miles to the north of the city centre is Cleveley's. The local post office is in the Crescent at the start of Cleveley's town centre. A few doors further on is a barber's shop. On Thursday, March the 8th, the day before the robbery took place, one of the barbers noticed 2 men hanging around the area.
You busy? Very busy, actually.
An actor plays the part of the barber, although he himself describes what he saw that day.
I was suspicious because they were hanging about all day, and every time I went to the window, they were there. On that Thursday, I'd been really busy, and I had just finished with a customer. I went next door to get a drink from the amusement arcade. The men outside drew the attention of the youth on the bandits. They glanced at each other.
All right, just a quick coffee, mate, please. No sugar.
My attention was drawn to the man and the bandit, simply because he was a stranger, and I know most of the people who go in there.
The other 2 men must have walked round the block, because as he returned to his shop, they were walking past again.
And in the headlines this morning, a major air and sea search has been carried out in storm-force conditions off the Lancashire coast after a man is reported missing.
The next morning in Preston, 18 miles away, Susan Myerscough drove to work as usual. She parked her blue Ford Escort in the staff car park near the Fishergate Centre at Preston. When she'd finished work 8 hours later, her car had gone. Earlier that same day, back in Cleveley's, a post office assistant had finished work for the day. She went round the back of the post office to collect her car. There were 2 men in the yard.
What do you want? This yard is private.
I've come to collect a parcel.
Oh, well, the office is shut, so you'll have to come back tomorrow.
It's very urgent. They've sent me around from the front. The parcel contains parts of my motorcycle, which I really need.
Oh, well, I'm very sorry. As you can see, it's shut, so you'll have to go round to the front.
Just a few minutes after that, pensioner Jack Evans was crossing over to the post office to send a letter. He was about to become the key witness in a robbery.
First of all, I thought it was just 3 young chaps being boisterous and running down the pavement, until I saw the masks and the sticks, similar to pickaxe handles. They were hitting the guard about the head and the shoulders and the legs. Don't forget there were 3 of them, so they had a good coverage of him. And the middle one was kicking him in the stomach to try to make him leave go of the money. And it was horrible. It was totally horrible, actually.
Jack had twisted his ankle, but he did his best to follow them.
Afterwards, I felt somewhat shaky and angry at these people. I thought the sooner they're caught, the better, these people, and get their just deserts.
Another witness was sitting in his car outside the post office yard. As he chased after them, they turned left into Coronation Road. Seeing them turn right at the top, he decided to take a shortcut.
Come on.
He lost them somewhere along Victoria Road West. 4 hours later, police found the stolen escort abandoned in Cleveleys behind William Hill, the bookmakers. Well, Bruce Dutch, the men seen there on the day before were the same men who carried out the robbery, were they?
These two men were seen hanging about the post office, watching the post office, and they must have walked round the block a few times, and their actions were suspicious to say the least. From witnesses, we have been able to complete artist impressions. The first man is 5'8" to 5'10", early 20s. He's got mid-brown, collar-length hair with a side parting. The second man is 5'10" to 6 foot. He has mousy to fair hair, which is described as spiky on top. He has an angular face and a somewhat distinctive hooked nose.
Now that fair-haired man, the description fits very much the man the post office employee saw in the post office yard on the day of the robbery, just before it happened, in the red tracksuit.
The man with the red tracksuit was seen minutes before the robbery, and the witness has seen the artist impressions from the persons the day before and has described them as being very similar.
But it was minutes before the robbery, and yet the robbers weren't. None of the robbers was wearing a red tracksuit, so how could he have changed so fast?
That's correct. He must have done a quick change act nearby, perhaps in the back of a vehicle.
What about the third man who was seen by the barber in the amusement arcade, again the day before the robbery?
He was seen in the arcade, and there's no doubt he was known to the other two men. He, again, is in his early 20s. He's 5'8" and has dark collar-length hair. He was in possession of a blue holdall, similar to this one.
Just an ordinary navy holdall?
That is correct.
Right, so if anybody can link those two descriptions and that holdall, if you think you might recognise either of those two descriptions, or if you saw those men on Thursday the 8th or Friday the 9th of March, if you can add any detail at all which may be of help to Detective Inspector Bruce Dutch and his colleagues, please do ring us here in the studio, 01 811 8055. Or call Lancashire Police Direct at Fleetwood Police Station on 03917 6611. That's 03917, the code for Fleetwood, 6611.
Well, we're getting an overwhelming response on the Michael Boulton case, but I have to say very few of the callers think that they saw Michael Boulton on the day in question, the day he disappeared, Sunday, May the 7th last year. Instead, we've got Michael Boulton lookalikes. It just could be Michael, you never know, but probably lookalikes in all sorts of parts of the country, but particularly in clusters in South London and in Worcestershire. So we'll try and find out rather more about that. We're now to Aladdin's Cave, a chance to see if there's anything that you recognise among a big collection of property that's been recovered by two forces, Thames Valley and Nottingham Police. To take us through it from the Antiques Roadshow, here's Eric Knowles.
Well, we start with a piece of pure Victorian nonsense. It's a Cowhorn Trophy Cup won by G.J. Robbins, who was a champion at Chiswick in 1898. The mind boggles at what part of the animal's anatomy the runners-up actually got. But here's a little fellow who's quite happy to blow his trumpet. It's a nice little French bronze by that great French sculptor Clodion. But for my money, this is my type of bronze. Lovely little group, Bloodhound. It should really be a title, You Ain't Nothing But a Tortoise, I feel. Behind me, an object which is really a test of the potter's art. It's a potpourri. It's pierced all the way through, and it comes from Hungary. It's from the Jernai factory. It's always got that sort of Japanese Koro look to it. Well, the next item is obviously Japanese. It's a Japanese photo album, but the funny thing was that the actual album was full of photographs of church interiors. Now, from Japan to Eyam, we find a cigarette lighter. It's yellowed silver, and it's inscribed to a Mr. Lang from a Mr. Ramjivar. Now, it forms part of a hoard that includes here watches, rings and various gold chains. But everything that is not gold. And this, for example, is a good case because this is a Spelter clock. Again, it's French, 1880, but it's been regilded recently and it's been resilvered. Now, behind me is a black marble clock with its side supports. They're the important feature. There was a time we couldn't give these things away, but the police are pretty sure that the owner of this clock didn't actually give it away. It's always sad, of course, to find a clock mechanism without the clock. And here's a piece from a long case clock. It's actually inscribed Kimpton Walden. Now, it's had new hands put on it, and I noticed it's had a new pulley put on behind. Obviously, police are looking into the case. However, here next to it is an ormolu mount of about 1830, and it's sadly lacking a figure. But it just so happens that we've got two Minton figures of about the same date that are a perfect fit. Are they yours? Now, at one time I took up the game of backgammon, but I wasn't very good at it. But if I'd had a case like this, it's in carved oak with lovely sort of Celtic motifs, and it lists to reveal they're actually plastic pieces inside. After that, we move over to another executive toy in this case. It's by the Henley Company of Craftsmen, and it's a little Scrabble game. Now, from one toy from the 20th century to a game of the 19th century, or even earlier, this is the Dice Players. It's an oleograph. It's a coloured print. It's by Klaus. It's all a game of chance, and that we hope that chances are that you may have spotted something here in my Aladdin's cave. If you have, please be a genie and get in touch. Thank you.
And if you want to get in touch, here's the number, 01811 8055. That's 01811 8055.
And now Photocall, our file of faces police are trying to identify or trace. To take us through them, here again are Detective Constable Jackie Hames and Chief Inspector Colin Fry.
Colleagues in North London are looking for this man who they believe could be dangerous. On Friday the 19th of February, at 1:45, he went into the Alliance and Leicester Building Society in High Road, Whetstone, North London, where he threatened cashiers with a gun. He was seen to drive off in an old, orangey-brown Vauxhall car. Last year, on the 17th of July, he tried to rob the Woolwich Building Society in Roman Road, Bethnal Green, but on the 28th of July, he went further. He took hold of a customer at the Leeds Building Society on Kingsland High Street, Dalston, threatening her with a gun. Investigating officers are obviously worried that he might injure someone seriously if he's not found. He's in his early 20s, 5'6", and has a stocky build. So, if you think you recognise him, please get in touch.
Police investigating a rape in the King's Cross area of London would like to speak to this man, Louis Brendan Bennis. He was last seen in May 1989 at Harrow Police Station and may still be in the London area. He's 28, 5'7" with a stocky build and has an Irish accent. You might know him as Julio. If you know this man or have any information about his whereabouts, please call us now.
Flying squad officers in London want to know who this man is. They believe he's responsible for 2 robberies in North London. On the 6th of October last year, he went into Barclays Bank in the Caledonian Road, Islington, threatened staff and got away with £500. We believe the same man is responsible for a similar robbery 4 days earlier in Southend Road, Hampstead. Those might be tradesman's overalls he's wearing. The raider is about 30, between 6 foot and 6 foot 2 inches tall, with greasy brown hair. Please, call us if you recognise him.
This man has made a habit of robbing the same place. On Friday the 26th of January, he walked into the Alliance and Leicester in Kingston upon Thames, handing a note to a cashier. It said he had a gun. He walked out with the money towards Bentall's in the precinct. A month later, on the 23rd of February, again on a Friday, the same man went into the same building society and approached the same cashier. Again, he demanded money. The man is in his mid-20s, 6 foot tall, with mousy, collar-length hair and has a southern accent. The building society is offering a reward for information leading to his arrest. If you know who he is, or have information about any of our Photocall faces, please call us now.
And here's the number if you think you recognise any of those people or know where they might be, 01811 8055. 01811 8055.
Our next case is one that's been baffling to almost everyone concerned with it. Surinder Gill was an insurance broker who lived in Southall near Heathrow Airport. This video was taken at a family wedding. Here, as always, Surinder was the life and soul of the party. Early on Tuesday, January the 30th, Surinder was found stabbed to death in his car. Now, at first it seemed as though he and his vehicle had been hijacked. As more witnesses came forward, though, the events of Mr. Gill's last hours have become more and more mysterious. It's Monday, the 29th of January. Southall, west of London, has a thriving Asian community. For most of the last 25 years, Surinder Gill has lived here.
Right, none of us like maths, but you still have to do it.
He began the day as usual, ferrying his daughter and his brother's 2 children to school.
I suggest to you that you pull your socks up. Yeah?
Yeah.
Right.
Surinder had done well since he himself left school. He'd clearly prospered.
Come on,
He drove an expensive, customised Mercedes.
Come on, let's have your zip up. Alright, are you alright then? Listen now, you're going to be a good girl and behave. Alright then, right, I'll see you later. Let's go. Bye-bye, alright. Bye.
Mr. Gill had acquired a distinctive number plate reflecting both his name and his personality. He was flamboyant, image-conscious, and drew attention to himself.
No problems at
His
all.
car was virtually his office, and much of his business was conducted on his mobile phone.
Yeah, if that's the policy you want, then that's the way I'll arrange it. Not at all. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Bye.
He was regarded as a charmer and was well known in the neighbourhood. At lunchtime, Surinder had bought some sandwiches and chips, but he never got to finish them. A few moments later, he was noticed by Bobby Chana, who works at this chemist shop in South Road. A few seconds after this, something extraordinary happened to Surinder Gill. It must have taken place somewhere down this high street. Were you in South Road, Southall, at 2 o'clock on Monday, the 29th of January? Did you see an unusual incident involving a maroon Mercedes? At 2:01, a business associate rang Surinder in his car.
Hello, Mr. Gill. Hi, it's Mr. Hill. I've got the file in connection with your property.
Can I come and see you now?
No, you can't actually come and see us today. You can come and see us tomorrow. The accountant's not in today.
Disconnect.
Mr. Gill?
Take me to
Mr.
for now. Disconnect.
Mr. Gill?
Whatever happened in or near South Road, within moments Surinder's car was seen half a mile away in Merrick Road. It's now 1.5 miles away at 2:10 on Greenford Road.
That's strange. The guy in the car over there's wearing a crash helmet.
Half a mile further up Greenford Road, the car was seen to turn around and head back towards Southall. At Beaver's open space in Hounslow, a witness saw a big red car drive across the playing field beside Green Lane. It's possible the car remained here for half an hour or more. Do you remember seeing it? And what was going on? Surinder failed to collect his daughter from her school. Whatever happened to Mr. Gill that afternoon, one witness says he reappeared that evening at Gillette Corner. At 6:45, as though nothing in the world was wrong, he turned up at the Comet Warehouse in Scion Lane.
I'm having a lot of problems with this, a lot of interference. Do you think you can sort something out for me?
Sure, how about the NC9A?
Yeah? Good price?
Good price.
Good model?
Good model.
Right, listen, I haven't got a lot of time now. I've got to meet somebody in Southall. When should we meet?
Thursday, 2 o'clock?
Yeah, that sounds good. So I'll see you on Thursday then, yeah?
Okay, don't worry about the price.
Right, do me a good model. I'll see you on Thursday.
No problem, see you later.
Several people had tried to ring Surinder, but couldn't get through. His family was now worried, especially since he'd failed to collect his daughter from her school. His car was seen at 7:30 and again at 9:30 in Southall. But where was Mr. Gill? 7 o'clock next morning, back at Beaver's open space off Green Lane, Hounslow. John Wilford was exercising his horse, Kestrel. A man was slumped in the front passenger seat. Surinder Gill had been attacked in the car by at least 2 men, and though he'd plainly struggled, he'd been stabbed to death. Stuart Hull, what on earth was going on? It seemed he was hijacked, and yet there he is, nonchalantly, apparently turning up at a shop to try and buy a phone.
Yes, well, it is very baffling, but what I think happened was that he was in some way overpowered that afternoon, just after 2 o'clock, in the area of South Road. He was either hijacked or kidnapped, call it what you will, but something drastic happened to him at about 2 o'clock that afternoon. And what I'm anxious to do is to find anybody who saw that actual incident. Now, we've had nobody yet who's actually seen the men in the crash helmets get into the car.
OK, let's make it clear. This is Monday the 29th of January.
Yes.
And we're talking about 2 p.m. or a few moments thereafter.
Yes.
And it's South Road, possibly Merrick Road, that sort of area.
Yes.
In Southall.
That's right.
And what would people have seen, do you think?
Well, it's possible that the men in the crash helmets actually jumped into the car and overpowered Surinder. And, I mean, to see anybody get into a car carrying crash helmets is very unusual and should have struck a bell with somebody. It should have lodged in somebody's mind.
Then the car disappears, and so does Surinder.
Yes.
After about 3:30 p.m.
There's a 2-hour time gap where we have no sightings of the car in the afternoon between 3:30 and 5:30. And it's possible that the car was parked up somewhere during that time, and obviously we would like anybody who saw the car during that time to come forward.
And presumably you need to contact all his acquaintances, anybody who knew Surinder Gill.
Yes, that's right. You described in the film that Surinder was a flamboyant character, and indeed he was. And he had his faults just like the rest of us. But what I would like to say is that his murder has left a terrible scar on the family. And the family in the Indian culture is at the centre of their lives. Now, something has happened that's destroyed this family. They've put up a £5,000 reward, and I would ask anybody out there who's got any information to come forward so that in some way this family can start to repair the damage that's been done.
OK, well, if you knew Surinder Gill, if you saw his car on that day, 16GLL, it's a very distinctive number plate, do please, if you haven't yet spoken to the police, do get in touch. This is part of a video of Surinder taken 3 months before his death. There he is in the white. Here's the number, 01811 8055. Or you can try the incident room in Sunbury-on-Thames. That's 01577 4481. That's 01577 4481.
And apart from the calls coming in on Michael Boulton, there are calls on incident desk and our photocall cases. On the series of rapes in the Gipswick Park area of Ipswich, a few people have rung in, but all giving different names for identifying the rapist. Christine Lee, the 10-year-old girl who was murdered near Glasgow. A disappointing response on that, although police are following a couple of new leads up there. And 2 callers have rung in giving a lead on the Kingston Raider. If you think you have information about any of our cases tonight, do please give us a call. The lines here are going to be open until midnight. You'll find the direct numbers to police on CFAX, if you have that, on page 618. And if you'd like to write to us, the address is Crimewatch UK, BBC Television, London W12 7RJ. We'll be back with news of progress on this evening's calls on Crimewatch Update at 11:35. If you can't wait up until then, I'll be bringing you some more progress reports on Daytime Live shortly after midday tomorrow.
Meanwhile, of course, do remember that Crimewatch, along with television generally, to say nothing of cinema, newspapers, literature and all the rest, by focusing on serious crime, can make it seem, and does make it seem, much more common than it really is. In any case, with your help and with the calls now coming in behind us, some of tonight's cases are already on the way to being solved. So don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night. Oh, have we? I suppose we have, really. Oops. Hello and welcome back. An enthusiastic response, I think I can say, from viewers on tonight's cases. Information on most of our cases, some new leads to work on and some existing lines of inquiry now eliminated. First of all, the Surinder Gill case.
That was the baffling case of a businessman from Southall, west of London, who seems to have been hijacked in his car and who vanished for an afternoon, then reappeared as though nothing in the world had happened. Many people reported seeing Mr. Gill's car being driven by a man apparently wearing a motorcycle crash helmet. Next morning, Surinder Gill was found murdered. Stuart Hull has been collating all the calls. I gather you're really very pleased with the response.
Yes, indeed. The phones have been buzzing at the incident room, and so far we've had 2 more sightings of the driver with the crash helmet, which is encouraging. We've had a sighting of the car at about 4:30 in the afternoon, which is also encouraging because that was the missing time, you'll remember, between 3:30 and 5:30. And most importantly of all, we think we've had a sighting possibly of the actual hit in South Road that afternoon, just after 2 o'clock.
Now that was the moment we know that something extraordinary happened, because he was on his car telephone at the time and the guy on the other end heard this extraordinary interruption. Somebody actually thinks they saw something happen.
Yes, what seems, we've got a witness who seems to think that they have seen the driver being restrained inside the car by the passenger, and that's really encouraging. So if there's anybody else out there that's seen this incident, that's in South Road. It's apparently near the junction with Beaconsfield Road, so people in the area will know that junction. It's a very busy junction.
And this was 2 o'clock, Monday the 29th of January?
Yes.
OK, thanks very much. Sue?
And police in Blackpool were looking for the 3 men who robbed a security van outside the post office at Cleveley's, seriously injuring a guard. A local man remembered seeing 2 men hanging around the area the previous day, so there were good descriptions of the 2 men. And Mr. Dutch, you've actually heard, I gather, from the man in the red tracksuit.
As a result of the programme, we've had a telephone call from the man in the red tracksuit to say that he and his friend were actually at the back of the post office just prior to the robbery. And this has been verified, so we can safely eliminate him from our inquiry.
And it's just coincidence that his description was very similar to one of the men who was seen hanging around the area and on the day of the robbery.
That is correct, yes.
So we have those 2 descriptions again, because we've got some names for them, I gather, but nothing definite.
We've had a few phone calls suggesting names for the 2 men, and the first man was 5'8" to 5'10", early 20s, mid-brown collar-length hair with a side parting. The second man was described as 5'10" to 6 foot. He was in his late 20s. He had mousy hair, fair, and it was spiky on top. He had an angular face and a distinctive hooked nose.
OK, Mr. Dutch, thank you. And remember the dates were Thursday the 8th and Friday the 9th of March, if you saw either of those 2 men on those dates. Nick?
Well, let's see now if any of our photo call faces have been recognised. This is Detective Constable Jackie Hames. We had quite a number of London cases in this. Let's start with the Whetstone robber in North London.
We had a fairly cool response, 3 calls giving names, but sadly none of them correspond, so please keep the calls coming in on this one.
OK, and what about Julio, as he was known, Louis Brendan Bennis, who's one in connection with a rape inquiry?
Unusual name. Quite a good response. Some calls suggested he originated from Limerick in Southern Ireland, several sightings in North London, but more interestingly in south of England on the coast, including one call that the officer is particularly keen to follow up, so fingers crossed.
OK, the bank raider then in Islington?
Yes, originally there was a poor response. The call calls included sightings in and around London and also one possible name. But we've just had one call that was very interesting and gives a name of someone in Islington with a very similar description. So again, we're keeping our fingers crossed on that one.
And what about that really persistent man who robbed the same building society in Kingston in Surrey twice?
Yes, that's right. I'm delighted to end on a case which actually produced a lot of very good calls, many giving the same name. So we're hoping for a good result. The officer is sitting here in the telephone area, looking very confident, I should say. Good.
Jackie, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Sue.
Well, our Aladdin's Cave this month came from Thames Valley and Nottingham Police, but of course it could have come from burglaries anywhere in the UK. And Eric, has anybody recognised any of the items?
Well, one item I didn't actually talk about was this barometer. Now, I'd like to stress that the maker is a London maker called J. Hicks. So one lady very keen on that. Nobody claimed my hound dog, I'm afraid, by Jacquemart. Lovely piece. But good news on this little lighter. No less than 4 people have given the same name. This Mr. Lang apparently was a lecturer or a writer.
So that's going to be reunited by the sound of it.
Pretty sure. And a lady made a comment about this watch, which was shown in the jewellery group. Now, it is inscribed on the back and dated 1940. Got strains of Vera Lynn coming in there, haven't we? And another lady telephoned about this clock, wanted to have another quick look at it, and it actually shows a Scotsman upon a silver steed.
Pretty distinctive. If you'd owned that, you'd recognise it, I think.
Well, you should. But, alas, I mean, I rather like this backgammon box, and I'm prompted to start playing again, despite losing all that money. But, nice quality. The nice thing, I think, also is that, you know, the counters, well, they're not ivory, and that means you can play with a clear conscience, because no elephant has given up its life for your game of backgammon.
Maybe somebody will claim it yet. Eric, thank you very much.
Fingers crossed.
I can tell you the calls are still hot with calls coming in. The phones are still hot at the moment. I think, as far as I can see, virtually every line is busy still. Let's go now to Michael Boulton, the tragic disappearance of a 16-year-old from the Peak District. Almost a year after he vanished, Derbyshire police suspect he's been murdered. He was last seen walking and jogging along the A623 about 2 miles from his home. Now, by curious chance, the detective in charge of the case shares the same name, Mick Boulton.
Yes.
Not a very happy response so far. I mean, I know a lot of people have called in, but I don't think you've been enthralled by the result.
No, we've had an enormous response from people who are giving possible sightings of a boy answering Michael's description. They are well-meaning, but unfortunately they're in all parts of the country, everywhere from north to south to Ireland.
It did look earlier on in this evening as though there were clusters of them, Worcestershire
yes,
and in London.
Worcestershire particularly, in the Stourport-on-Severn area, we've had about 6 different sightings of a boy answering Michael's description in that area. All of these calls will be checked, but really, what I'm hoping for is to speak to people who were in Eyam and Stoney Middleton on the 7th of May last year,
right,
who may have seen Michael.
You haven't altered your opinion. You think he's been abducted and probably murdered?
I do indeed.
OK, well, if you can help, we'll give you that number later on. If you were in Stoney Middleton, Eyam, that area of the Peak District, May the 7th last year. Sue.
Well, now to find out what's been coming into Incident Desk, Chief Inspector Colin Fry. First of all, there was the very sad case of Christine Lee, the 10-year-old in Glasgow who'd been murdered. Any news on that?
Well, the police in Glasgow needed information because appeals locally really had not produced very much at all. And there have been several calls so far. Some people have actually called at Rutherglen Police Station. New information has come forward, but we still need to know who this person is seen running away from the pond that night.
Right. And it was Monday, February the 12th, that date,
was.
so please do call if you do know. Your colleagues in Suffolk had linked 3 rapes in the Gipswick Park area of Ipswich.
Yes, a fairly good response. Over 20 calls in this studio here, and another 10 calls back at Ipswich. Some calls from prison officers who believe that ex-offenders, in fact, fit the description. So the possible identity of the video fits does look promising.
Right. And finally, that theft at the Clock Museum in Bury St Edmunds.
Well, only a few calls. We certainly want more. One good lead. We can't talk about that at the moment, I'm afraid, but I would say that there is a substantial reward in connection with this crime.
Colin, thank you.
Well, that's about it for tonight. Our lines are closing in a few minutes. If our people can get off them, as I say, they're absolutely jammed at the moment. If you have some information in any of our cases, local phone numbers will be on your screens in just a moment. Alternatively, of course, you can always, if you want, just ring your local police. And don't forget, crimes as serious as the ones that we've shown tonight really are very unusual. And with all these calls, we'll help to keep it that way. So don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.